I do think there's an economic element to our democracy that we have to pay attention to. Our democracy is not going to be healthy with the levels of inequality that we've seen generated from globalization, automation, the decline in unions, obscene inequality. You think about news of the day. Generally, we're not talking about news of the day, but right now we have 24-hour coverage, and I understand it, of this submarine, the submersible, that tragically is right now lost at the bottom of the sea. At the same time, right here, just off the coast of Greece, we had 700 people dead, 700 migrants who were apparently being smuggled into here. And it's made news, but it's not dominating in the same way. And in some ways, it's indicative of the degree to which people's life chances have grown so disparate. It's very hard to sustain a democracy when you have such massive concentrations of wealth.
Yeah, so what Obama's referencing there is the fact that around the same time, there was another tragedy going on off the coast of Greece where a boat full of refugees, I believe mostly from Pakistan, sank. And while 100 were rescued, many, many hundreds more died or drowned, and hundreds more are missing. And it's a pretty heartbreaking incident. We unfortunately see that kind of thing like rafts and poorly constructed rafts and boats where refugees try to sail somewhere because if they can land there, they can claim asylum or refugee status if they touch the ground or whatever it may be. But then he's saying that, and this was a very popular narrative online, that society only cares about the billionaires and doesn't care about the poor people. I think this narrative is bunk for a bunch of reasons, but Hannah, give me your thoughts before I go off on my soapbox.
Well, I always first and foremost find it really interesting when we're criticizing what's in the media, period, because the media is presenting what they think people want to hear and will click on. And if it isn't what people are tuning into and clicking on, they will quickly move away from a story because they are driven by clicks to make money. They are driven by eyeballs to make money. So when people start criticizing a story being popular, I'm like, turn the finger right back around on yourselves because you are the one that is driving the narrative. And certainly social media was the one that first kind of grabbed onto this story about the Titanic submersible. That's where I first saw it long before the mainstream media jumped on board. It was TikTok, it was Twitter. And so I thought that was a little bit just hypocritical. And then additionally, I thought it didn't really make sense because this story about the refugee boat was also all over my timeline quite quickly. And yes, I do think that was more so because grassroots content creators were raising it online, but they were out in masses talking about this. So to say that society
did get
care,
less coverage, though, to be fair.
Less for sure, but to say society just doesn't care about this, I don't think that that's accurate. Did it get the same degree of like intense interest? No, but I think you've laid out some things in your Newsweek article we want to dig into here that I think are really good explanations for why that is, that have nothing to do with what they're trying to allege here, which has been that basically one of these boats had a lot of billionaires, so people cared a lot about it, and one of these boats had poor refugees and people didn't care about it. I simply don't think that that's accurate. And the only other thing, my first instinct before I read your article on that was also, one of these things is American adjacent, right? It's an American company. It happened off the coast of America. People are very familiar with Titanic, even though it was sort of like going from England to America when it sunk. It's kind of been considered like an American tragedy. And I'm sorry, but America dominates the global news. It just is what it is. Travel to other countries, turn on their news networks. They're talking about America. They're talking about what's happening here. Whereas the other one happened off the coast of Greece, which is just, sorry, not that interesting to most people. People aren't following Greek politics. They're not following what's happening in Greece that often. And I think that was my first instinct. But you presented some other arguments that I think are really interesting for why one story got so much more attention that have nothing to do with class.
It's simply not about money because it's about the uniqueness of the circumstances. The Titanic submersible thing where we thought they were trapped at the bottom of the ocean 2.5 miles down in this crazy vehicle. It is unique and novel and terrifying and darkly entertaining. Whereas it's really sad, but boats full of refugees drown pretty regularly. It's not unique or different. It doesn't capture the imagination in the same way. And it doesn't have anything to do with the money, because you'll remember just a few years ago, there was this huge story about this Thai soccer team that got a boys soccer team with their coach that got trapped in a cave system and for almost 2 weeks. And there was this huge international effort with divers and people coming in from all across the world, US, UK, Australia, to come help and assist in their rescue. And they were ultimately rescued, although one diver, a heroic diver, died in the process. And they were rescued, and this got the same kind of attention. It was the biggest story in the world for like 2 weeks. And none of them are wealthy at all, because it's not about the wealth. These people are just, they want to make anything into class warfare politics, but it really had nothing to do with money. It had to do with the circumstances, the uniqueness, the American tie-in, the fact that it's off the coast. Is it morally right that we as a society, as a global community, as media consumers, care more about some deaths than others? Maybe not, but it's not class warfare related whatsoever. Yet that has been the narrative. And at first it was just fringe people, like you said, but now it's filtered through the mainstream media and even mainstream liberal figures like Obama. That's the narrative they're going with. And I find it really contemptible. I really do. I find it gross that they're taking tragedies and politicizing them to wage their ideological war against the wealthy or against inequality or whatever. It's just distasteful to me.
Yeah, I think it was important to point out this was an outlier event, and so it did grab more attention, and people are limited, and it's really awful, but there are so many tragedies that happen every day around us. We cannot possibly pay attention to all of them or equally care about all of them. I do think another thing that made this different was that I never thought this was actually accurate, but a lot of people thought there was hope that those people on the submersible could be recovered. I think most people who were pretty aware of like the actual circumstances of what they were playing with didn't actually think that, but a lot of people did. And so you sort of had this like race against time, optimism, hope for the best. And I think that's a really good part of humanity where we really want to save people if at all possible. And we'll go to great lengths to save anybody, right? Any single individual, we will really go to bat for if we can to try to save them. And that's admirable. But instead of celebrating that human spirit and attention to individual life, I saw a lot of people on the left sort of saying like, well, we shouldn't be having to pay for these kinds of resources to go after these people. It's it's not right that tax dollars are being used to search for them. And again, I just think it's proof that the left's ideology is inhumane oftentimes, especially when you get into like progressive communist actual ideology. You have to dehumanize people. You lose respect for individual life. And that is just such a permeant part of their mentality. And that was really on rank display. And it was disturbing to watch. I really found it quite stomach turning. Again, the media is going to cover things that are interesting to people. And I think sometimes you do see some factors, like, for example, when a young woman goes missing, you're probably more likely to hear about it if she's very pretty and young. That is fair, but that is what is going to get the nation's attention. But that being said, on the other hand, if there's a police shooting, you're more likely to hear about it if the person was black, right? I covered Duncan Lempon propaganda this week, which was a horrific case that I think hardly anybody's heard of. And probably the fact that he was white had something to do with it. So you can say that like at times there is a class issue or a race issue or a gender issue and what gets attention and what doesn't. But I think there's always sort of other instances that prove that that's not consistently true. It really is just the circumstances of each case. There are factors that make it more interesting to the public. And if you don't like that, guess what? You as a person with fingers and a keyboard have the ability to bring attention to whatever tragedies are compelling to you, to whatever you want to choose to elevate and to become an activist on. That's your prerogative. And if you want to change what the media is talking about, don't click on things that you don't think are interesting. So